Welcome, welcome, welcome. Come plan with me. I'm showing you my September bullet journal cover because I used gouache. Now, I am not experienced with gouache. This is my first big project, so I thought it'd be good to show you some of the things that I learned. And if you don't know who I am, I'm Viv. Welcome to Art with Viv. So let's just jump right into it. You know, I always sketch it out in my bullet journal first, and I proceeded with the gouache. Now, gouache is different from watercolor in that it is more opaque. The other thing is when you can do a nice wet on wet technique with watercolor, not so much with the gouache. It gets a little streaky, or at least the way that I did it. So it doesn't do a lot of really nice wet on wet effects, but it is blendable. You can reactivate it. Now that's where it comes in different than acrylic. Now acrylic, watercolor, and gouache are all water-based mediums. The difference is watercolor and gouache, once you paint it, you can reactivate it. If you come over it with another color or some water, that color will come back up off the paper, whatever you've already put down. Acrylic, once it's dry, it's done. You're not moving that acrylic. So that's one thing about gouache, is it's like watercolor in that you can reactivate it. It is different than watercolor in that it doesn't give the same beautiful spontaneous wet on wet effects, things like that. Now it can be used similar to watercolor if you thin it with water, but for me that came out a little streaky. Another difference with gouache and watercolor is watercolor, you use the white of the paper so that you can lighten the color. That's the white is the actual color of the paper for watercolor. But now in gouache, you actually have white paint that you can mix, and I really enjoyed doing that. You can lighten your colors with the white paint. It also will make your colors a little more opaque. So that was something interesting that I learned while I was doing my little chipmunk here, and I decided to do a woodland theme. So throughout my September bullet journal, I've got little woodland characters. I'll show you at the end. This is just really focusing on my cover page. I will do more smaller videos, shorter videos of each weekly spread if you want me to, and that way you can see how I painted each of the little animals, the little woodland creatures. So here I just wanted a nice blue background because the chipmunk is kind of an orangish brown. Blue and orange are complementary colors, and so I just worked really hard to blend this together. You can see I am really struggling. I'm working on this thing, but again, this is my first big project with gouache. I'm not that familiar with it, and so I'm just trying to pass on some of the things. And I will leave some of the tips that I have for you down below in the description so that you can remember those things that I'm telling you. The other thing I learned about gouache is don't use watercolor brushes. The reason is watercolor brushes hold entirely too much water, and when you have that much water, your colors tend to be streaky when you paint them onto your paper. Especially, this is cheap paper. It's only 160 grams, I think, or something like that. It's really a light paper. Of course, it's in my bullet journal. So it got really streaky the more water that I had in the brush. So what I did is I switched over to my acrylic brushes, the brushes that I use for acrylic, and that helped a lot because acrylic brushes don't hold as much water as watercolor brushes. So that's my tip for you there. Don't use watercolor brushes that hold a lot of water, especially if you want to paint it thickly and opaquely like I did. So I also did some of my tricks like I did with the watercolor for the eyes. Instead of using black out of the tube, I went with the brown and the blue mixture. You know that's my go-to for a black, to mix a black. But the beauty of gouache is you can use the tube black, and it's okay. I mean, it's okay in watercolor too. I just think it's more vibrant if you mix your blacks in watercolor. Totally up to you. And I really like that even though this dried, like his nose dried on me, but when I came back with a brush that had some water on it and a little bit of paint, it reactivated that, and I was able to blend those two colors together even after that first layer had dried. So that is one plus for me with the gouache. I really enjoyed that part of it. And you can see I'm not really that skilled with this gouache. My little chipmunk, he's looking all catty-wonka, but that's okay. It's okay. It's okay to have your art look catty-wonka. And sometimes it goes through an ugly stage. All art hits that stage. You know, when you're a teenager and you get them bumps on your face and your hair is greasy and you might have gained a pound or two and you're in an ugly stage. But then after a year or two, it's like everything clears up. You've lost your baby fat, your hair is stunning and gorgeous, and you have gotten through that ugly phase to your beautiful phase, and your paintings go through that too. And this one is going through an ugly stage, but I'm going to stick with it. And I suggest you do the same. If you think you're struggling with your painting, just see it through. Just know that every painting, every piece of art has an ugly stage, and you will turn it into a swan by the end. You have to have that faith. You have to have that confidence. You will turn it into a swan. So now I've decided that I'm going to put my darker colors on first. And that is another thing I learned about gouache, is that you can put dark colors on first and cover them with lighter colors. You cannot do that with watercolor. It just will not work because it's transparent. So that was another difference, and something else that I really was enjoying, because I could cover up mistakes. I could put my dark colors down first and then come back, even if they were dry, and with a damp brush, maybe with a lighter color, I could still blend the two together by reactivating that first dark layer. So that part I'm enjoying. I'm really enjoying that part. So I'm getting his little ears in there. I'm putting the shadows at the top. I'm trying to put some little white fluffy, I was going to say feathers. Goodness gracious. White fluffy fur in those little ears. And, just trying to get it to look a little bit more realistic. So now I have jumped. I've jumped through the magic of video, and you see where I've layered those colors of brown, those shades of brown, and just did little tiny hair marks to define the fur. I paid attention, as always I tell you in every single video, pay attention to the lights and pay attention to the shadows, what shapes they are and what positions they're in. This is sort of like a little teaching video more of it than anything else. I'm just trying to help you learn what I learned the hard way by actually doing it. And really, that's the only way to learn, is by actually painting. I can sit here and tell you all day long how to paint, but until you actually put brush to paper, you're not going to really learn. It's not going to become internalized. You have to do the work to get good at it. That's just life, man. I'm sorry. So anyway, I got his little paws there. I made him sort of a pinkish brownish color, almost a flesh color. Got those. I'm letting that dry. I got his little arms painted to match his fur on his face, sort of that reddish brown color. I used gray in the shadows of his cheeks. His cheeks are white. He is just stuffing them cheeks. I mean, this little thing is stuffing his cheeks full of acorns. And he's going to carry them back to his burrow, and then he's going to use his little paws and he's going to push on the back of his little cheeks, and those pockets that are filled with nuts are going to empty into his burrow, and he is going to save those for the winter. Now I went with the acorn. I've got a couple of colors of yellow, green, and sort of an ochre color, and I am just dabbing in colors. I am mixing the colors right on the palette and also right on the acorn. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it anyway. I've never let not knowing how to do something stop me from doing it. And that's something I would love for you to take to heart. Just because you don't know how to do it, don't let that stop you from doing it. Because when you do it, that's when you learn. So I was just blending all those colors. Now decided it needed a little brown in the acorn. That is what I really love about this medium, is I can just layer it and just keep on layering it if I want to. Probably if I layered it too much, it would get too thick, but for the most part, you can layer a couple of times and it's not going to really hurt your painting. Now I just added a few more shadows with a little bit of that blue gray. I mixed some blue gray on there. Again, I'm just using a meat tray. I think it has some hamburger meat on it. I washed it really well with some hot water and soap, and here we go. That is my reused palette for my gouache, because I don't really have a gouache palette. And just adding, okay, he's got the little acorn upside down, so the little cap is pointed to the bottom, and I'm trying to get some texture on that cap. Again, this is beautiful for doing texture work. You can lay down that layer of dark brown and then come back over it with lighter browns and some yellow, like creamy yellows, to give it some highlights, and it looks so good. So that is one thing I'm really pleased. So I decided, after I finished this little chipmunk, I was like, oh, I am going to do all my little woodland creatures with gouache. I'm not going to go to the markers. You know, for a while I was hot on those markers, those watercolor markers, and I'm still using them in my bullet journal for like the lettering and stuff. But I got this gouache. It's just been sitting there staring at me, and I said, okay, gouache, I see you over there. I'm just going to dust you off, and let's try you out. Let's just try you out. And I think I'm going to try a few more. And of course, my chipmunk's not the greatest. This is my first little big gouache attempt. So he's not the greatest, but he's not the worst either. And I'm kind of liking him, and I'm learning a lot from him. And that is the whole point. The more you do, the more you learn. So, you know, I can't go wrong. I'm not going to fail. I can either succeed or learn, or, you know, figure out a different way, but it's not a failure as long as you're learning and doing. So never be afraid to fail. Failure, you really aren't failing, you're learning. So just look at it like that. Just reframe it in your mind. Now I'm just adding some highlights. That's the other thing I love about it. Like I said, you could put that dark layer down first, but then you can come back with the highlights. Now the one caveat to that is, if you have a darker color and you put white on top of it, that white is going to absorb that color that's underneath it, so you're not going to get a true white like you'll get if you put a dark brown down and then try to put white over it. Unless you got it really thick on your brush and just barely touch the paper, if you don't do that, if you just try to paint, it's going to absorb that brown and turn into like a really pale beige. So you're not going to get a true white if you lay down a dark color first and then put white over it, because that white is going to absorb a little bit of that color. So that is another thing that you need to think about when you are painting with gouache. Mr. Darcy's getting upset. Hold on, let me get him tended to. My little guard dog, he saw some golfers on the golf course, and he just let them know that they cannot come in our property. He is here and ready to defend it. Not that they would ever come on our property, but you know, he's just letting them know that he is here. So now I went to some more fall colors, and you see I've got more of the acorns painted, and you see I went darker on the edges, and then I did sort of a just white right down the center, and that white picked up that green that was underneath it. We're talking about the acorns now. Look at the acorns, and you can see it's not a true white, but I love it. I love the way that looks. Now I'm just going to paint in some foliage, some ferns, maybe some oak leaves, and I'm just letting the colors mix onto the paper, like I'm dabbing it down, and I'm actually dabbing the tip of my brush into those colors to make them mix on the edges. Like I said, it doesn't really, unless you really thin it down, it's not going to give you that wet on wet that watercolor does. So this was really a lot to take in for my first painting. I was learning left and right, making mistakes left and right, and I just said, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to video it, and then I'm going to tell everybody what I learned from this. And boy, did I learn a lot. But again, that's the only way that you are going to learn and internalize it, is by doing it. So I live by that, and I hope that you kind of take that to heart and start doing more and stop being afraid. Art is not scary, and everybody has their different style, and just because you do it one way doesn't make it wrong, and I do it another way and that makes it right. You do what's comfortable and what pleases you. Art is about pleasing yourself on your own little creative journey, and that's it. Now I'm adding a little shadows to his tummy there. His little tum-tum is showing through, And so I'm just putting some shadows on there, and they're a little bit darker of a bluish sort of gray, and then I'm putting some leaves over that, some foliage with some deep blue-green, just to kind of set off some of that orange that I got in the leaves there, that oak leaf, and just put some darker greens. You know, the same thing that you would do with watercolor. You want some light areas, some medium areas, and some dark areas. And so I'm just trying to get those all in there, and just, I'm not trying to paint every little leaf. I'm just like dabbing. I'm dabbing and dibbing and dabbing. That's the best way I can do my ferns, is just to dib and dab and get it done. Just get her done, people. Just get her done. So we are just moving right along with this. As you see, I put the dark green down first. I came back with a medium green, and now I'm just hitting it into some areas where it needs to be lighter, and then I am going to hit it in some areas where it needs to be darker with some darker paint. The other thing is that lighter paint is not showing up as well against that dark blue, but I think it's okay, so I'm not gonna worry about it. Now I'm just adding some shapes to just indicate leaves, because I'm tired of painting leaves. So now I'm just like splushing. That is a technical gouache term, splush. I'm just joking. You just smash that that paintbrush right onto the paper and let it just make those little shapes, those little splush shapes, and before you know it, it just looks like leaves. And you see I had several different colors on my brush when I was splushing. I had some orange, red, and yellow, and so that made my little marks look variegated. I liked that, so I just continued to add more splush leaves all around to kind of fill in the areas. Now, like I told you in the beginning, I did not give up completely on my markers. I went and did my lettering with the markers, and I tried to kind of make a graduated green, like a light green, a medium green, and then a dark green on the bottom of the letters, just to give it, I don't know. I was just trying things. I'm always trying things. So I just wanted to see how it looked, maybe give it a little ombre effect. I don't know. I'm just telling you what I was thinking as I was doing it. And you know, I wish I had left it just like that, but of course I didn't, because I'm a messer, I'm a fiddler, I'm a tooker and a tweaker, a joker and a jeeker, I don't know. So this is what I did to ruin it. I decided to put a blue background on it, and in the future I will not. I should have just left it, say September, and left it alone, but for some reason I decided it needed a blue background, so I went ahead and did that. And I regretted it. I had buyer's remorse big time. I was like, oh no. But hey, it is what it is. I'm showing you everything. I'm letting you know the mistakes I made, and you know what works and what don't work, because that'll help you hopefully avoid mistakes. So I got it all colored in with that blue, and I decided I was going to try to make the letters stand out from the blue, because then it just kind of all went together, which is why I think it did not work. I should have left the background plain with just white paper. But I went ahead and I just kept messing with it, because I cannot control myself sometimes, especially when I'm learning a new medium. I just do things, and then it doesn't work, and then it does work sometimes, and then I learn from it. So I decided to outline it, and that did help. It helped it some I took my acrylic Posca pen, and I just outlined it with white, the word September, and I was like, I don't know, that looks okay. So I then decided I needed some sparkles behind my little chipmunk, so I did some little Posca pen dots back there. It could be stars, those could be flies, those could be gnats, they could be little tiny fairies, they could be whatever you want to be, but I put some little dots just to give it some sparkle behind his head, because why not? Just, I was experimenting and trying new things, and I'm not ashamed to say that I think it came out okay. Now my September, the word September, no, I will not be doing that again. That did not come out right with the blue background, but it's okay. So there we go. Now I'm going to just show you the rest of my layouts, and like I told you, I'm going to do shorter videos on the rest of the layouts that I did. So this was my cover page, And then I did some deer for my monthly planning page, my overview for my month. I thought some cute little deer. Again, I'm doing a woodland animals theme, everything in gouache and marker. Then I went with raccoons for week 1, and then I had a lot of planning area over there in week 1 because it was only a 3-day week. I went with a sweet little hedgehog for week 2. I really liked that little hedgehog, and it was really fun in gouache. Then for week 3, I went with a hoot owl. I think he came out good too. I like that I put him in the dark because owls are dark or nocturnal animals. Then I put a little fox in there, really looking sort of worried. And then a little baby skunk for my last week. And so I will do shorter videos on each one of these weeks so that you can see how I did with the gouache, and I did do better as time went on. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please hit subscribe, give me a comment, give me a like, share it with someone that you think would enjoy this. And I hope that I have at least shown you a few of the things that I've learned, and I will leave those down in the comments. I might even make a little free giveaway of tips on gouache that I've learned and put that link down too. So see you next time.